I'm here today with Anthony Lamacchia, who is a very, very good friend of ours, and broker owner and CEO of Lamacchia Companies. So, Anthony, can you jump into just a quick intro on yourself?
Yeah, I'm broker owner of Lamacchia Realty and owner of Crush It in real estate. I'd say those are probably our two most known real estate related businesses. And we have some other businesses as well. And I come from a family of landscaping business, and my brother runs that. But my main focus is on Lamacchia Realty and Crush It in real estate every day.
And the topic today that we're going to cover is what we're expecting in the fall market. And I don't know what you're going to say. And so I will let you know if there's any kind of thing that I have a question on or something I might not be expecting. But I'd like to just dive right in. There's a lot of factors right now. There's NAR, there's the election, obviously there's an inventory, there's rates. So do you want to just kind of dive into what does Anthony see happening this fall? And then we'll kind of dig in some more specific questions.
Yeah, I think that we're going to experience another slow fall. We've had two slow falls and winters in a row, and I think this is going to be the third and probably the last. I have a hard time believing that it could really be a very busy fall. I mean, we had a very busy fall in 2020 for obvious reasons because of what happened with COVID in the spring. The fall of 21 was also very busy. This year, I just don't see it. I think that realtors need to be focusing on doing as much business as they possibly can in about the next 60 days. But once we get to about 45 days prior to election, you run into a lot of people who say, well, I want to see what happens in the election. And we see it pretty much every time, even midterms. But this particular presidential election is obviously, it's hitting the history books every week at this point. 10 days ago, our past president, who's a candidate, nearly gets, shot to death, which is an atrocity no matter what side they're on. It's an embarrassment, in my opinion, to the world to see a president or a past president of the United States come that close to getting killed. Now, here we are a couple of days ago, President Biden says that he's no longer running. He's endorsed Vice President Harris. So there's just a lot of odd things. Those two are historic events. Those two.
Right. All in the last.
They happened in 8 days.
It's insane.
So, it just raises the temperature. So, what does that mean? What does that mean for realtors? If I'm a realtor, I am a realtor, as you know, but if I'm someone out there beating the street, hustling every day, I'd be in touch with clients. I'd be telling my buyers, look, the best time to buy is when other people are pulling back on buying. The best time to sell is when people are pulling back on selling. The problem is most people don't see it that way. You have to go against the grain. People that go against the grain are people that are successful. Warren Buffett says you should be greedy when everyone else is scared, like this fall. And you should be scared when everyone else is greedy. And, not everyone operates that way, though. It's just how it is. So I think that we're going to experience a slower fall, but doesn't mean that sales won't happen. We are so lucky to be in a business that never, ever stops, ever. There's always sales, regardless of the month. Look at COVID, the first 3 weeks after COVID. They're all over the news saying, basically, if you go out of your house, you're going to die, right? Still over 1,000 sales a week in Massachusetts, 1,000 pendings a week, over 1,000 homes listed a week, 1,400 listed a week in the 3 weeks following COVID hitting and then putting us on basically a homebound lockdown. That's pretty interesting. We're lucky.
It really is. That kind of leads to my next question, although you just said it. If I'm someone listening that wants to sell my house, or I'm an agent that needs to advise my seller, someone who wants to put their house, they'd put the house on the market anytime in the next year, what are you telling them?
Well, here's the thing. You have to sell when you're ready to sell. What most sellers don't realize, and I've been saying it on the news since 2011, is homes sell for the most money in the first 6 months of the year, right? First 6 months of the year is a better time for sellers. Second 6 months of the year, which we're in now, is a better time for buyers. For sellers to get the absolute most money, they need to list in February, March, or April. Mm-hmm. Going to be selling in the fall, you've got to be more realistic. Doesn't mean you're going to get 20% less, but will you get a little less than if you listed in February or March? Yes. And you have to be realistic about that. And if you're also buying, who really cares? So you give up a little on the house that you're selling, and then you're going to gain that in the house that you're buying. But if you try to be greedy on both ends, you'll get stung, you won't sell, or you'll end up selling for even less than you would have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree with you. And so on the other hand, if you have buyers or you are a buyer, you really should be getting aggressive this fall if you can find something.
Buying in the fall is the best time of year to do it. I recognize that not everyone can do that because they often have a house to sell or they're dealing with children that are in, school and things like that. But if you can buy in the fall, if you're a first-time buyer, buying in the fall is what you should do. And sometimes they'll first-time buyers say, well, I'm stuck in my lease till March or April. Okay, if you can do it, buy in the fall, push the closing date as deep into fall as possible. When you buy the property, paint it, rehab it, spend a couple months making it look nice, and then you're out of your lease by spring. Even if you have to eat 2, 3, 4 months in both places, as long as you can financially do it, you take that money back in a big way just by being able to negotiate a better deal.
Yeah, truly. Everything I've ever bought has closed November, December.
Because you're in the business.
Yeah. And honestly, it's not even like a strategy that you really it's just like you just kind of, that's what happens when you're looking and
listen, inventory of homes for sale in Massachusetts historically is highest from about August to middle of October, and the absolute peak is late September, early October. Well, the best time to buy is when inventory is high. How it works.
Yeah. Yeah. So can we dig in a little bit there too? Obviously, we know we have an inventory issue kind of across the board. Can you speak a little bit to inventory right now and then what you think the inventory is going to look like?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we put out updates on marealestateupdates.com. It's on the Lamacchia Realty website, but there's a certain branch page that every single week we have line graphs and we plug in how many homes are for sale, how many listed. And we've been tracking this data back to 2011. On that page on marealestateupdates.com, you'll see the data back to 2017. It's getting better. It's getting better, but it's getting better very slowly. I mean, one thing the Fed didn't realize when they dropped rates, they knew they'd slow the real estate market down, but they slowed it down in a way that they didn't expect, which was slowing down sellers. Because if you're a home seller with a 2.8% interest rate, you don't want to give up your interest rate in trading for a 7 or now a 6.75. I mean, 4 points higher.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And then what about NAR? How do you think that the NAR settlement is impacting, especially just around us?
I don't think it'll affect buyer and seller behavior very much, but it's obviously going to have to affect realtor behavior and realtor practices and habits. And, the way that we conduct business is inherently changing here based on this settlement. Now, very well that I am very blunt about my opinions with this case. And I think the whole thing's a sham. I don't think it makes anybody any safer. I don't think anything's more transparent. I don't think it's any better for buyers or sellers, but it is what it is. And there's going to be a new rule book on the way that we do this, and we're going to have to deal with it. MLS no longer is going to allow the posting of compensation. Obviously, we live in an area where and the MLS pin that we have might for a period of time until they're told not to, but commissions are going to be needed to be negotiated into transactions, written into purchase agreements, maybe accompanying compensation forms, those kinds of things. And realtors are going to have to learn to do it. And if they're not already training on it, they're making a mistake. This should be taken very seriously. And I think that it is being taken seriously by people that are serious about this business, but that are doing it part-time or, picking up a handful of transactions a year. I don't think they quite realize how much is about to change a few weeks from now. And they're going to find out soon.
For sure. So all that considered, I told you this would be fast. We'd get it. We touched on everything, but all that considered, the main audience here are realtors, and most of them are in this area that we're in, kind of the greater Boston area, but a lot of them are across the country. So that's, I think, what I'd love to wrap up with is just what's your biggest piece of advice going into this fall? I know you said the next 60 days are most critical. Get as much done as you can. What is it? What's the rest look like from there?
Well, this is a time of tremendous opportunity, Nicole. I mean, look at what your dad did with Gibson. Your dad and Paul did with Gibson back in 08, 9, 10, 11, buying companies. They were buying companies around Boston. They were making moves during a tough time. And at the time, he pushed the envelope. And that's before I knew him. They took a lot of risk. I'm doing the same thing with my company now, but I'm also doing the same thing and pushing our realtors to do the same thing. There are going to be less realtors in the business 1 year from now. Their spheres, their circles of influence, their friends, their relatives, they're inherently going to have to get connected with new realtors. That is your opportunity, right? There's also a lot of realtors in this business, you know this, that are getting other jobs right now, getting part-time jobs, trying to make supplemental income. And I don't knock them or shame them for that. This is the slowest real estate market since the early 90s, and in many ways, it is the toughest real estate market since the early 80s. People are doing what they have to do to feed their family, right? But for those that are staying in serious, you need to grow your database, grow your audience, get in touch with people, fill your database with more names, more email addresses, more home addresses. Send people postcards once a month, telling them what's going on in the business, making an offer to them, offering them a home valuation, offering them a free buyer consultation, offering them some sort of financial planning with respect to real estate. Just offer them things and show them success-based marketing that you're doing things. Show them the homes that you're selling. Send out a monthly newsletter, put out housing reports. Nicole, we are so lucky, us in real estate. We are so incredibly lucky to be in a business that people always want to hear about at all times.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you and I and a handful of friends went to a party, and we've done that before, but if we went to a new party and one of our friends was a carpenter, when that carpenter walks into the party, no one says, hey, I heard there's a new kind of plywood out there. Tell me about the new nails. No one does that. When someone who is maybe an IT specialist in an organization, they go to a family party, people don't walk up and say, hey, tell me about the cyberspace and what's going on with Microsoft. No one does that. But when you and I walk into a family party or a get together with friends, what do people say every time?
How's the market?
How's the market? How's the market? It never, ever ends. I've been on the news over 250 times live since 2011. And people ask me, how do you do that? How do you do that? Because I push content out. The more you educate, the more you attract folks. And if you put out education about the market area that you work, homes listed, homes pending, all these different things, average sale prices, you push out content enough, you're going to draw people to you. And you're making a mistake if you're not doing that.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's a huge time for opportunity, and people that say sort of the consolidation, they try to make it sound like it's never happened before. Like we've talked about this on the podcast a bunch of times because I keep saying this has happened a ton of times, and it is a time for opportunity for someone that wants to double down from a brokerage standpoint or from a sales standpoint. There's a lot that's going to be out there to grab up, and it's a great time to sort of start to plant the seeds, especially just for the spring market. So if you are discouraged at this moment, because I think some people are just like, what is going on? And then like looking at the election, looking at what's happening with NAR, everybody's just a little bit like, what is going to happen with the fall? I wanted to get on here with Anthony today to just sort of band together, especially if you're in this area, and say, this is what we think is going to happen. These are some things we think you could do proactively, because that's what we always try to leave people with, is just something that they could do instead of just worrying about something that they can't control. So what you just said is a perfect way to end, because that's what people can do. You can go out and just dig a little deeper and start to push out that information and make sure that you're front of mind for people, because that's the best thing to be doing at this moment. And we'll see what happens. We'll have to jump on after and see if what we predicted was correct, and maybe touch on something else for the winter or anything. We'll look ahead at the spring market.
Yeah, I think that it'll be a similar market to last fall, maybe a little slower, maybe slightly busier. But my point is, I don't think we're going to see it get back to typical fall norms that we saw 2 and 3 years ago. I don't think this will be the fall that does that, but I think that it probably will by next year, because things are bound to turn around. Thank you very much for having me, Nicole.